therapy in a nutshell and what actually happens in a session. So, this podcast is for anyone that is thinking about getting into therapy, or if you have a loved one that is thinking about joining therapy, but is a little bit on the fence, a little afraid of what's going to happen, or just not really sure if it's for them. This podcast is for you. The reason why I wanted to do this podcast is because obviously I'm a therapist and I've been a therapist since 2019, so half a decade. Being a therapist is really fun. And what's really fun is seeing the transformations that happen in the therapy room. I can say with confidence that there are people whose lives would not be what they are today if they did not go to therapy, whether that's with me or with someone else. I mean, I can't begin to share some of the transformations that have happened, whether it be people who have doubled their income, increased their profits, increased their happiness, overcame addictions, put marriages back together, relationships back together, fall in love with themselves for the first time in a long time. So many different things, being able to overcome their past traumas, like there's a lot. And therapy is the key to all that. So if you're someone that's looking for those transformations, those changes, and it's maybe it's one that I haven't mentioned, right? But if you're looking for some type of change in your life, therapy is the place to start. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the first point as to what therapy is like. But before I do, make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you can get more information like this. And here's the thing. If you've been a loyal listener to this podcast, you've actually, I can say with confidence, you've kind of been to therapy, if you will, because a lot of things that I share in these podcast episodes are things that I would share in a therapy session. So by subscribing to this podcast, you definitely get a taste of what it's like to be in therapy, and you can go ahead and start your journey today by just simply hitting that subscribe button. So point number one as to what therapy is like in a nutshell, well, therapy is kind of like basketball practice or any practice in terms of a sport that you've gone to. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased as an ex-basketball player. No, therapy is really like that. You know, when you go to basketball practice, your goal is to go to practice to simply get better. But here's the thing, we're not just doing random stuff. We're working on the things that we feel are weaknesses in our game. And to do this, we need to talk to the coach, which is like a therapist. And we need to tell them what our weaknesses are and what it is that we're wanting to improve in. And it's the jobs coach to give you the drills that you need to work on to get better with your ball handling, get better with your jump shot, get better with your defense, if you will, or maybe even just simply get in shape. That is the job of the coach. And the job as the athlete is for you to show up willing and ready to take action on these drills. Now, what does that look like for someone that's entering therapy? Well, maybe you need to work on your communication skills. Maybe you need to work on managing your negative thoughts. Maybe there's some things from your past that's holding you back, and you need some help being able to let go of your past so you can really grasp your future. Things like that are like the drills that you need to take when it comes to therapy, that you need to practice when it comes to therapy. And the beautiful thing about this metaphor is that, practice, yes, is a place where you can get better, but there's so much you can do outside of practice. If you look at some of the greatest NBA players, football players, or whatever the sport is, they don't only show up early, but they leave late, meaning they're putting time outside of the practice that's scheduled. It's the same thing in therapy. You need to put time outside of therapy to work on your goals. You need to put time outside of therapy to work on your goals, guys. If you commit to this, because here's the thing, let me back up a little bit. What I see a lot is that people believe that coming to therapy is enough. They just show up, they allow the coach or the therapist to do all the talking, and they may talk a little bit, and they think that's it. These are the people that don't see changes in their life. These are the people that think therapy doesn't work. So if you ever hear someone say that therapy doesn't work, trust me when I say they're one of those guys. Because if you showed up to a basketball practice and didn't do anything, or if you just kind of went through the motions with the drills, don't expect to be one of the best players at the end of the year, right? The MVP or one of the championship winners, or to be a part of a good team, or to even get in playing time, right? Like, how dare you expect that with the little work that you put in? So you got to show up outside of the therapy sessions. But also what's great about this analogy is that when the game comes, you get an opportunity to practice these skills. It's the same thing with therapy. Your game may be next time you have an argument with your loved one. Your game may be the next time you're on the phone making a sales call. Your game may be the next time you're faced with, do I go back to sleep or do I go to the gym? This is where you get to test out all those techniques, so all those drills that you've been practicing in therapy. And when you go out there and practice, you're going to get data back. You're going to get some results back. And what you do is you bring that data back to the coach, so back to the therapist, so that you guys can talk it over, look at it, and see what adjustments do we need to make. Because when you play sports, there's an eye in the sky, as we call it. There's a video camera that's recording you guys. And what we can do is we can take that game film, and that's something that we used to do as, when I played basketball, we would take that game film and we would dissect it. We would look at what things we did well, what things we didn't do well, and we will make adjustments. It is the same thing when you go to therapy. Point number 2 as to what therapy is like in a nutshell. Well, therapy is one of those very few places at the beginning where you can really be your true self. In this space, right, that you're given, you're able to experiment and explore different emotions, different actions, if you will. You can really let your guard down and be the person that you really want to be. It's been in therapy where I've even had people who were, let's say, presenting themselves as being a straight heterosexual man or woman, and in the therapy sessions come out to me and say that they actually prefer the same sex, so homosexuality, right? Like, because they feel they live in a society or even in their own homes where they feel like something like this is demonized, right? They feel as though they can't come out and be them true selves because of the backlash that they would get. And that's just one example. I can't begin to tell you how many people who are, let's say, lawyers that would maybe prefer to be an author, right? And that was a real client that I actually had. Or people who are, let's say teachers, right? Where they really prefer to be entrepreneurs. And that's another client that I had. Like, there's so many things that people find themselves hiding. And it's because they want to be safe. They don't want to be judged or anything like that. But therapy is that one place where you can really be your true self. It's the place where you can actually cry and not feel like you're soft, you're a little girl, or you're a little boy, or whatever it may be. It is by far the most freeing space that one human can give to another. And that's what therapy is like. Therapy is a place where you can really be your true self. And for some people, it's from that space they actually find who they are and what it is that they want out of life. And then they can set a plan with that therapist to actually go and achieve these things, to grasp these things. But you can't do that unless you're being true and honest with yourself. And having someone to help facilitate that with you is a great thing to have. So point number 2, therapy is a place where you can truly find yourself. And my third point as to what therapy is like in a nutshell and what actually happens in the sessions is that in therapy, this is a place where hope and change is created. Now let's talk about the first one. And I'd love to give a definition of hope. So hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Now, how does this happen in a therapy session? When I'm talking to my clients and they're telling me about all the things that they've gone through, I'm able to draw similarities to their story, whether it be mine or previous clients that have experienced similar things. And I'm able to share with them how this client or how I myself has had that same thought and been successful later, has had that same experience happen to them and come out on the other side of it. In the real world, people sometimes cover up their pain points, things that they struggle with, if you will. And that's a shame because what it does is it creates a world of perfection. It creates a world where there's no space for people to, let's say, stumble, right? Be imperfect. And that's a very, very hard thing to live up to. But in therapy, none of that matters. Actually, therapy is the last place where someone would expect you to be perfect. We just simply expect you to be yourself. So what I'm trying to say is that in this space, right, in therapy, from speaking about what you've gone through and hearing these stories, being vulnerable, being open, you're actually able to see that what you're going through is actually okay. What you've experienced is something that many other people have experienced as well. I'll even give you this. Just this week, I had a new client that was telling me about some of the anxieties that he was experiencing. And what I did was I actually showed him a study that showed that Anxiety is actually needed. That's right, needed for you to perform at your peak, to perform at your highest level. Because people come to therapy thinking that they need to get rid of their anxiety in order to have a great life. And if I were to help you to get rid of your anxiety, you wouldn't perform at the level that you perform at. That's the thing with anxiety. And that's honestly the thing about therapy. You get to learn new studies. You get to learn how the mind works. And what that does is it helps you to see that this is actually normal, what you're going through. So that's the first part. Change, right? So change is the other thing that happens in the therapy room. And it comes from the therapist listening to what you have to say, the struggles that you're experiencing, right? So the things that are getting in the way of the goals and the desires that you have, right? So those obstacles, we're able to see them, identify them, and then give you techniques that's going to help you to overcome them. I have so many techniques that I give clients that I honestly tell them to create a photo album so that they can save them, but I also tell them to write notes during our sessions. And the reason why is because at any given time, they can pull out a technique, use it, and get new results from maybe something they've been struggling with their whole life. You know the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a new outcome. But when I give you a new thing to do, that will give you the new outcome that you're looking for. And this is what happens in therapy. At the end of the day, therapy is just a conversation that two people are having. And one side, honestly, the therapist, they're just simply educated on psychology and how the mind works. And from hearing and listening to your problems, things that you're struggling with, they're able to give you strategies to help change your life. It's not all about the crying and the, you laying on the couch and all that stuff. That doesn't really happen in therapy. I can honestly tell you, not to me, I haven't sat in too many sessions where people have broke down. I have sat in a few, but that is not the thing that is always happening in therapy. And it shouldn't be the thing that's mainly associated with therapy. Therapy, it really is a place where two people come together to work towards a common goal. And that is done through speaking, through talk therapy. That is it. I don't want you guys to overthink it. I'll actually even add this. So I'm going to put some pressure on you guys. And I say this to my clients too. So I love this part. If you're someone that's listening to this podcast, and honestly, if you made it this far to this podcast, it's probably because you know that therapy is right for you. So if you're listening to this podcast, I would challenge you to go to your first therapy session and to go to your first therapy session within the next 30 days. It's very easy, guys. You can just simply type in therapist near me. There's a ton of websites. One of them is Psychology Today. Another one is called Hello Alma. Another one is called Grow Therapy. You can also even just reach out to your insurance company and just ask them, what are the therapists within my zip code that accepts this insurance? And also, it's probably a therapist at your job. Just gotta simply go to the HR department and ask them. But nonetheless, guys, therapy is something that you should do if you feel like there's a part of your life that's missing. If you feel like there's something getting in the way of what you believe your life should look like. I think you owe it to yourself. If you have kids, you owe it to your kids to show them that they shouldn't allow obstacles to get in their way. And if you have a mentor, a parent, or someone that has poured into you, you owe it to them to show what is actually possible when someone believes in them, when someone takes them under their wing and pours into them. That is what you owe them. So with that being said, I'm going to go over these 3 main points of what therapy is like. And again, make sure you subscribe to this channel. So the first main point that I made is that therapy is kind of like basketball practice. You come together with your coach and you go over the drills that are necessary to improve your game. The second point that I made is that therapy is a place where you could find your true self. Let that guard down and really show the world, but honestly show yourself who you really are. And then the third point that I made is that therapy is a place where hope and change is created. This is Coach Wells. I'm a licensed therapist. Thanks for checking out this podcast, and I'll see you later.